Today, we're having a quick talk about the Blackthorn hammer. A decent number of you has probably already forgotten what that item even is. No need to feel ashamed about that, it's not very frequently used. Blackthorn hammer is a tier 3 item of the Cudgel tree with a tier 2 item called Shalala or whatever you want to call it, so that's pretty funny. But the stats of the item are 30 physical power, 350 health, 200 mana, and it has a rather curious passive. If you're reduced to below 40% health, this used to be 30 but now it's 40, then 3 seconds are subtracted from all abilities currently on cooldown and all of your abilities cost 0 mana to cast for the next 5 seconds. This effect can only be activated once every 60 seconds. In order to understand this item a little better, see where its place is, it's probably best to just put it in perspective towards other items. There are some other items in the tree, but those aren't really built either. Neither Frostbound Hammer nor Runeforged Hammer are seeing much play, so what we should look at here is something else that has health and power. And there's Masamune. Masamune is a very popular item at the moment, especially among assassins and warriors, so I think it's the best point of comparison we have right here. And first of all, Masamune is a fair bit more expensive. 300 gold more, 2500 gold. At the same time, Masamune's tier 2, 1000-fold blade is actually cheaper. It's 1300 gold as opposed to the 1500 gold for however you want to pronounce that thing. Masamune is shifted a little more in a aggressive direction when it comes to the raw stats. 50 physical power, only 100 health, and 10% movement speed on top of it. However, it has a passive that kind of makes up for this. You get a stacking protection buff for enemies around you. It's 7 per enemy guard around you, and it typically ends up between 14 to 21 protections if you're in a team fight, as you will have some enemies around you. So you get some more defense that way. Now, weighing protections against health when the protections are conditional is very hard, so we will leave it at a scraping of the surface here basically. 20 more power on Masamune is a significant difference in damage, especially if you build this as your only power item. The significantly lower HP will be relevant in many situations, but with the protections and the movement speed, you're kinda able to make up for it. Especially movement speed allows you to avoid a fair bit of damage as well. So overall, you will probably take less damage with Masamune, and that results in having a more tanky build by having Masamune rather than just going for the pure health. It's also not as easily countered as it's both protections and health, whereas Blackthorn Hammer is just health, so Kinsai's, for example, will shred through that. Then again, Masamune is also a bit more expensive. So if we were just looking at the items stat-wise, they kinda could go somewhat even at least, with Masamune having the upper hand, but Blackthorn Hammer could make up for it with a strong passive. So let's look at exactly that. Having your cooldowns reduced by 3 seconds can be pretty crazy depending on which god you're playing. If your god has low cooldowns or you're in a fighting situation where you used your cooldowns a while ago, this can be very beneficial and it can give you a really strong upper hand in that situation. But something is awkward about this. If you look at the stats this item offers and then the passive, you will notice that they're actually the opposite of synergistic. If you have more health, it means it takes longer to get below 40% HP, as the enemy will have to shred through more HP. That kinda comes with the item, that's kinda what just happens. If you add more protections, it would also take longer to get to this lower threshold. So really, there's not much you can do about that, as long as you want to keep that item in a sort of a tanky spot. Yet still, it's not exactly synergistic. But the other part is worse. You get 200 flat mana on this item. Now flat mana, in my opinion, in my eyes, is one of the weakest stats in the game. There are hardly any gods that have high benefits from flat mana, especially in the physical department. MP5 is usually the better option, as it will regenerate while you're around, and you usually don't spend your mana once before you get back to base, you'll just regenerate over time. And for that, well, flat mana is just not very helpful. It is a stat that you can have, and on certain gods it makes sense if you're very mana hungry. But I also don't see Blackthorn Hammer as an early game pickup for most gods, and that's where mana would be most beneficial, most useful. So that is the one half, and the passive does the opposite. It takes away the mana cost from your abilities. If you already have extra mana and you should be less dependent on your mana cost because you have that extra mana, then how do you benefit from an ability that has lower mana cost? Giving Blackthorn Hammer any other stat instead of extra mana would just make more sense in my book, as really mana isn't the problem when you have 0 mana cost to begin with. On top of all that, the cooldown is also as long as some gods' ultimates cooldowns. It can only be activated once every 60 seconds. Compare that to Ancilla, which procs every 30 seconds, and it's actually quite laughable. The reality is that, from what I've experienced, Blackthorn Hammer sounds very nice on paper, but the passive will never help you when you actually need it. In many situations, you will just get bursted when you're already that low, because once you're low, enemies will target you out more, or one of your abilities may not even be on cooldown, or the passive goes completely unnoticed by you. It does have a visual effect, but in the heat of the fight, you may not be able to recognize it that quickly, and then it's already over before you've utilized your passive. I also, across all the games that I tried to use this item, which was quite a few, had a hard time ever fitting it into the build. You can't really build it early because it doesn't have penetration or enough power, for example on junglers to use it. You can't build it late because you just need other items there with better stats overall or more full defense items, things like that. And as such, the niche for it is incredibly small, seemingly only making it usable on a very few select characters from what I could find. The big deal about this item is still the synergy with Mantle of Discord, which is, again, on paper super great. You get this passive effect that stuns everyone around you, and then you get CC immunity, and then you get your cooldown somewhat reset, and you get free mana abilities basically. So that would be good on paper, but that will set you back by 5,100 gold. Mantle of Discord is not an item you build early in your build at all for its price, so you're gonna build that late, and Blackthorn Hammer is something that really only gets that synergy once you have Mantle of Discord, so you'd have to build it after, and at that point there's realistically often better item choices that just help you more overall, or you need something that is more revolving around your team, things like that really don't leave much space for something like Blackthorn Hammer. Now, different from other items, I can mostly speak from personal experience here rather than the stats, as the stats are very situational once again. But what from I could find, the gods that could benefit from this are only those that can go into a more tanky oriented build and also have some sort of self-heal, so that they can actually benefit from the cooldowns more by turning a fight around. The gods that came primarily to mind here are Thanatos, Camazotz, and Tyr. All of those can highly benefit from a cooldown reset, allowing them to use their self-heals again and then quickly heal up and turn a fight that way. Especially a Thanatos Scythe or a Camazotz 2 is something you don't want to give your opponent more often than necessary, as it deals high amounts of damage and gives them high amounts of self-heal. But then again, even for them, the issue is there that once they're low, they're definitely gonna get focused, so you have to build tanky enough to even be able to pull this off. That's my conclusion on Blackthorn Hammer until further notice. I would love to make more use of this item, but as of now, the passive just doesn't seem to cut it. I would like to see it change to 50% HP instead of 40, because then it would have great synergy with Shifted Shield as well, and that would allow for some new uses and would overall make it a lot more effective. With that, thank you guys for watching, I hope you enjoyed this. If you're new to the channel, feel free to click the sub button and maybe the bell, it really helps me out, and it gives you the chance to win some codes in the description down below. Also, I'll be streaming on Hi-Res TV tomorrow morning, that is 1 PM CET or 7 AM for the NA guys over there in Atlanta. See you either there or for the next one tomorrow evening. DukeSloth, out.